Good evening, and thank you both for joining me. I'm Akil Bello, and I've been in and around college access and college admissions and admissions testing for over 30 years. We're joined today by two amazing people I'm so excited to talk to. I have, from a distance, followed you both for several years, and this is the first time we're actually going to get to have a real conversation, so I'm excited about that. Whitney, I've watched you at three institutions now. Ah, so,
Four. Yeah.
so four. Wow, it's been a while. So that's amazing to watch to have a conversation about all of this stuff after all the years. And Jenna, I know you from Instagram. So, one of the exciting things to me is to hear more of your experience on the other side of this, because I'm on the
hmm
front end watching the other people on Instagram, and sometimes I'm bothered by that. I'm a little bit of a grumpy person, but I'm excited to hear from your perspective, especially as someone who spends a lot of time online. So it'll be exciting to see how that goes. So before we jump in, why don't you take a minute and formally introduce yourselves, give your full background, or whatever you think people want to know about you in this conversation. Why don't we start with you, Jenna?
All right, sure. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. So officially, yes, Jenna Schebell. I'm with the College Navigators. I started the College Navigators, I think, probably 3 years ago now. And it kind of evolved into this huge kind of social media space, which was never my intention. I had worked 10 years in college admissions and 10 years kind of on the high school side, counseling students. And so I had started the College Navigators. One was just personal because I go back and forth between Tampa and New Jersey, where I live all the time. And so a school setting wasn't super conducive. And the other was I knew, like with all my knowledge, I wanted to continue working with students as they were applying to college. And so that's kind of where the College Navigators grew. And just in doing what you do when you set up a business, which is, you build a website and you set up your social media pages, I was doing all of that. And so then I was starting to observe what was going on. And it's wild out there, like you said, with social media. And there's so much craziness, I guess we can say, with fear mongering and all this extra added pressure and a lot of just false information. And so as I'm watching all of this, then I'm the researcher in me is like, who are these people? And let me see. And then I would see like they have like no credentials in the area. So then I think I was just like, let me just be a voice of reason in this like messy space. And I just want to start sharing truths. And so it was literally never my intention to have anything to do with social media. But the more I just started trying to explain and break down why colleges do things that they do and that there is this entire business side drawing on my experience, people just kind of naturally started following. So I've kind of assumed this role in social media space, which again was never my intention, but it has been very rewarding to be able to help so many people and make the whole experience hopefully not as scary or give some insights as to why things happen because people see a GPA and SAT and it's like, well, why didn't I get in? And I should have. And they just don't understand all of the other things that go in. So, yes, that's the long and the short of me and how I got here.
Awesome. Thank you. Whitney?
Hi, thanks for having me. Hi, everybody who's listening. And I'm Whitney Soule. I'm Vice Provost and Dean of Admissions at the University of Pennsylvania. And I think I'm in my 35th year of working in college admissions, preceding my time at Penn. I was the Dean of Admission and Financial Aid at Bowdoin. And before that, I worked for Connecticut College and Bates College. So much of my career was in small residential liberal arts environment, and then a pivot to a large urban research university with 12 schools and a medical system, and a really different look into managing the components of bringing in an undergraduate class in those two different kinds of environments. But also there are things that are core across all of it that I think are really stabilizing for people to remember and to hear about. And I'm really excited to be in this conversation with both of you because, as you were saying, Jenna, there's so much noise. I think of it as like just frothiness out there, like whitewater. And it's becoming more difficult. I mean, not just in higher ed, but that's the thing we're talking about. But it's much more difficult to know how to discern what you're hearing or what you're seeing, because it's easy to attach to messages that either feel relevant to what you're most worried about or that support what you want to have happen. And they may not be realistic messages. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to talk through the three of us, sort of what's out there and how to help sort of navigate through it, to use part of your title, Jenna, and really help direct people to where sound information is for the questions they have in their unique situation.
I love that because part of what brought me to invite you was the video that you put on the webpage because I love that you and I think Robert Penman of UC
Davis.
Davis.
Yeah.
There was a D in there of UC Davis both specifically took head on the misinformation about the institution.
Yeah.
And it seems that generally speaking, admissions avoids taking head on the misinformation because it's tough to do. It's almost playing whack-a-mole, so I get it. Like you spend all your time doing that.
I can tell you how that happened. I mean, if you don't mind me going there,
Absolutely.
we several years ago added a short answer prompt in our application, which is a thank you note. And it was a novel edition at the time, and it was intended to be a place in the application where a student could demonstrate that they notice and can accept positive influence from other people. And to get them into that position to be able to show that, we're asking them to thank somebody, because everybody can do that. This is not a competitive question, right? It's not who's the better thinker. It's just it's information. It's just information in the application that everybody can do. Doesn't need resource. It's just thank somebody. And there's science behind thanking. Actually feels good. Actually thanking, not talking about being grateful. We had a number of reasons for putting this in the application. It was a carefully designed and intentional question. And the initial instructions are still on our website from the year that we launched it around, you can't get this wrong. This is it. You can thank whomever you want. There's no good or bad answer here. Enjoy it. This should be a fun part of the application. And almost immediately, I started seeing social media telling students how to handle that question. And many of them boiling down to, you need to use this question as a hook to thank somebody that you can bring back to your accomplishment. So thank the person who taught you leadership, and then, close the answer with the leadership role that you have. And I was like, well, that is actually the one thing you're not supposed to do in this answer, right? This is exactly not centering yourself answer. And that was a runaway piece of advice. It was showing up in all kinds of places. It still is. And I was seeing that the year right before that, we had stopped releasing our admit rate in our news release on decision release day, and sort of the categorical proportions of some demographic markers in our class. And I didn't want to present that. I wanted to present, this is what our students have in common. They're amazing. And 80% of them do community service, and 40% have jobs, and a third of them have done research. And it was meant to be the antidote to the anxiety around the decimal point of our admit rate. And somebody quickly, and then it was followed by many others out on social media, took, you need research to get into Penn. And we can help you select that research, do that research. And I hit a breaking point last year and said to our communications team, we need to get out there and explain, this is what we mean, and look to us for what we want in our application, because we're not hiding the ball. We're really clear. This is what we're looking for. This is where we go looking for it. And this is why we care about it. And we're not finished making those videos, but that was what inspired. We need to be more proactive about this, because you can't go after the post one at a time, right?
So, Jenna, you're a big time fancy influencer. Um, so from your perspective, so one of the things I
Mhm.
really like about your account is it starts almost always with here's information that I have easy access to that no one that that not no one else does, but I actually go to your site and I find out release dates, right? So I'm just tracking you for because you're compiling it in a way that is easy to access. I know where it is. I know it's going to come up.
Mhm.
How, and I've learned to trust you for that.
Mhm.
How can families navigate who the sources are? Because some of what Whitney was saying made me think about, do I do I just say don't trust the people who are selling you a product at the end of their advice? But I don't think
Right.
that's quite nuanced enough. So maybe
Right.
the question I'm trying to get at is, can you speak to A, the lines you sort of hold to on social
Yeah.
media, and
Yeah.
B, how you would advise people to find the good social media information?
It's tough. I think for me, you're right. Like I go back to like I research everything. I'm also part of like IECA and NACA and HECA. So I'm like constantly meeting with colleges too. So I'm hearing like firsthand from admissions office what's going on. And then when schools do put out really good pieces of information, like the video that you're talking about, or like when UC Davis put that out, or like Dean J at UVA, like she does lots of stuff too. I try to constantly share. Even like today, I shared the Vanderbilt stats, but I like put legit snippets of like what their dean or vice president, I don't remember which one it was, but like says explicitly about what they're looking for. So it's like I try to give people as much information that's coming straight from the source so that they know it's reliable. Because I mean, I can't tell you how many people, the minute things will come out, they'll be like, well, this is what I'm seeing with the trends. And I'm like, what are you even basing this off of? Like the people that are like messaging you, because like you don't work in the office, like you're not referencing the stats, you're just going off like vibes. Like, what are we doing? And so I think there's just so much misinformation that I just feel like I stick very factual and like direct people back and share a lot of things that come directly from the college. So it tends to stay. I think that's where people get the trust in it, is that it doesn't pivot from kind of those areas. And I don't do like wishy-washy, like, well, this is what I'm seeing. Like I just there's you don't know what goes into the college decisions. Like there's a lot of stuff that never gets shared. And I know that from having worked in there, but it's just like people don't understand that, I think, as viewers to the social media. But they do disseminate stuff, because I have people message me that'll be like, oh, I mean, that's a nice person, but you know what they're saying is never true. You know what I mean? So people will message me too. They do start, you follow somebody long enough, I think you start to say like, oh, okay, this is reliable or this is not. So
Yeah,
it's tough.
the interesting part. I read for two. I was a seasonal reader for 2 years. I was terrible at it. I was slow, and I kind of got fired or recommended to leave because it was appropriate. Like, no, and I was like, I can't do this. Like, it was not decisions I wanted to make, which
Right.
was really interesting because it wasn't a super selective school. It was like, I just don't want to make these calls. It's
Hmm.
hard to make those calls over and over, but also
Hmm.
recognizing how much information can't be shared.
Right.
Um, so the ability to sort of find ways to build trust, to help parents get information to ease anxiety,
Hmm.
given limitations of what you can share.
Hmm.
How do we get to the place where we can squash some of this anxiety, stress, the belief that trends mean like the trends of test scores coming back because 7 schools have returned to testing is now
Hmm.
representative of all colleges. And I think thinking
Hmm.
about you, Whitney, do you ever try to deal with all of the noise? How do you recommend folks deal with all of the noise?
I mean, it's really hard. So I mean, even the testing that you point out, what's really complicated about testing is seen as like a binary thing. You either require it or you don't require it. And the truth is, its use in evaluation, the role that it plays, the weight that it has or doesn't have, is probably entirely different, or at least uniquely different, in every school that uses testing. And so to assume that if a school has testing or not testing means something like that you can put that in two buckets, or test optional is also now a real array of what does test optionality mean. And to me, it's just reflective of the fact that institutions, if they're doing holistic review or comprehensive review, one of the things that's really challenging is part of the reason you can't give all the information is the data points that are available will never be complete enough for what you actually thought about on an individual, because every individual's unique components come together in a way that's not like anybody else's, and you're thinking about that relative to all the unique combinations that exist in all these other people that you're reading, and you can't reflect that back. So it reduces then to data points that people can find, and they naturally are looking for reasons. So they, will bolt together some data points and create a story or what feels sound, because you're looking at actual data points, when in fact it isn't nearly as reflective or nuanced as the work that we actually do. And there's probably no way to get to a place where you could fully reflect the nuance of how we think about each student completely. I do think, I worry about the use of singular data points tied with anecdote, which I think is normal in the human condition. It holds a huge space in social media. And one of the things I really appreciate about what you're saying, Jenna, is, your willingness to, first of all, like, does this make sense? And also, how does this school's information compare to this? Like, are these two things good to put together in trying to explain a bigger thing, or are they really separate? And I was on social media just the other day, somebody, I don't know what their credentials are, I don't even know if they have credentials, but they were comparing the admit rates of ED versus regular in a bunch of selective schools. And so clearly, your chances of getting in early decision at X school are 4 times greater than this school. And I'm thinking, no, because for the kids who got admitted early, it's possible the chances would be 100% for them if they had applied early. I mean, regular, right? On that particular kid, they were gonna get an offer whether they were in the front group or the big group. But that kid was a school that was a kid that school wanted, regardless of the round. But the math is something to turn to and like bolt together and start to make sense of. And that's where I think trying to find ways to direct families back to, if the school's not talking about admit rate, and if the school is talking about this is what ED is for, this is what early action is for, this is who should be in this pool, this is what it means, here's how we handle regular, then that's the information you want families to attach to around how does a student present themselves in these conditions in the best possible way, rather than trying to decode something that they'll never be able to decode because they'll never have access to all the information. And it's not to hide the ball, it's just an impossible view.
So let's make it more possible. What social, where do you go? We're living in a social world, so we're not going to get rid of, I can't shut down all the internets. So it's going to exist. Who do you rely on? Where do you go? Where's the best information? Is it TikTok? Because I don't go on TikTok, but my children told me I was too old for it, so I stayed off. But where do we go for the best information? Any
Are you
thoughts?
asking me?
Either one of you. I'm leaving that open to whoever wants to wade into that.
I think it's tough because I mean, I will say like the audience that I have on TikTok, like if I mean, sorry, not TikTok. I like barely have a TikTok. I hate TikTok, but the ones that are on TikTok, they're the younger kids. And then when I look at my audience, like I can see my demographics and stuff for my Instagram. By and large, it's 85% of women ages 45 to 55. I mean, these are your moms that are out there doing the dirty work, you know what I mean, trying to figure out the information to best help their kids. And I feel like that is truly what they're doing, right? They're just trying to get as much information because they go off, you know, to the bleachers at the games at their high school and it's the mom chatter. And it's like there's already so much information before they even get to social media. And then they get to social media and then it's an even messier space. But I think, I mean, the biggest points that I'm always trying to push, it's like a match to be made with college too. And I think people forget that piece of it, that like it's got to be a good fit both ways. And so much pressure is just on like, can I get in? It's almost like a checkbox. Like people just want to, I want to be able to say, I got in, I got in, I got in. And I just remember working in admissions and I could read a file or meet a kid and instantly know like, this is not a kid that would be successful here, or this would. It's just not a good match, but it's not to say that kid won't be successful somewhere else. And it's just, I think the pressure of social media adds so much intensity to, I mean, the amount of messages. I don't know if you saw my stories the other day, but so many people were asking, I have a school that I can afford, but it's not the prestigious school. Should I go into all this debt for the prestigious school? And it's just like, we're not even thinking like, what do our 4 years look like? What are our opportunities? Like, we're not even looking beyond the acceptance letter, it seems, because we're just so invested in that, like, one bragging point of I got in and I, you know, I was part of the 2% or 3%, you know, and it's just there's not that deeper level of thinking, which is so tough too. So
I really appreciate everything that you just said because it's really hard for me to see that happening also, particularly working at a school that a lot of people
yeah,
will apply to because of what it is without I mean, even when I see all sorts of posts about students who apply to each of the Ivy League schools, and I'm thinking, we're really different schools.
yeah,
Really not the same. We're in the same conference and we get a lot of attention for being Ivy schools, but we're not the same experience at all. And, to your point about a match, I think about like, how do people make friends? You know, like you don't want to force your kid to be friends with somebody that they just don't like, just wouldn't be a natural friend, and take them away from friends who feel really, really comfortable and fun and challenging and like all those good things, because the friends that you should have is this one over here. And I feel like we treat the educational experience in a way that's really artificial. And when it gets to be really selective, as it is at Penn, there's a lot of students who would be great matches who we just don't take because it's it's a discipline of limits, right? We have a
right.
limited amount of space and we attract a lot of students who are really amazing in all kinds of ways. And it just functionally means there's not enough room for all of them. But when the attention is on how to get something or how to catch something, right? Like, how do I get a spot? How do I get in? What's it going to take? Already the conversation has left that kid, right? And that's the part that I think about this even in I think about this in AI too, which I know we're going to get to AI at one point. But to get back to your question around like how do we get this under control and where do we look for good information? I will say, I think the hot take nature of a lot of social media is not healthy, because the work of admissions, and Jenna knows this from being on both sides of the desk, I'm sure, never mind where you sit now, sort of being able to observe the entire landscape, you can't ever boil it down into one statement. And if there were a hot take, it would be pay attention to who your child is. And work toward that. But the hot takes of like, this is what you need to know to get in, or this is what you need to know about your testing, is oversimplifying a process that is really complicated. And ultimately leaving kids and those who support them without the tools to think critically about how do I present myself with what I want to do and how I enjoy learning and the things that I have to show as signals for that, because that's really what an application is a collection of signals. Right? It's not going to be everything about a student so far in their lives. And I think looking for the messaging that feels like it is honoring the person who is applying rather than gaming the system is probably where you're going to find more secure advice.
Yeah, I wonder I think that's a really interesting point because it makes me think of there's two different conversations that should be had, and they often aren't had in the right order. One is, do I want to go there? And that should be had long before applications start. And then there's the conversation of, should I apply or can I get in? And I think, again, so maybe it's three conversations, right? Do I want to go there? And then it becomes, can I get in? And I don't think we have the do I want to go there enough early enough. It gets muddled under the can I get in?
Mhm.
Um, because I was thinking about just schools. Like I just learned that SUNY Purchase has a great theater arts program, which I'm in New York. I've been in New York for 30 years. I was born in New York, left for a little bit. Like you would think I would know these things, but but it's not what you hear, right? Being able to say, what schools in New York have a sociology program or a zoology program. And I can tell you admit rates for a lot of schools, but that's problematic when that's the thing that's put forward most. So part of this question for me is what can we do? Because like AI also had me thinking about it, right? These are things that in theory should make the good information easier to find. But I don't know if in practice that's actually happening. So rolling all of that into stuff for you guys to think about and pontificate about. AI, good or bad? Um, and where do we go to find that good nugget of information that says Syracuse has an amazing journalism program? So if you're thinking journalism, you look at Syracuse. If you're thinking film, you look at SCAD. Like, where do you find these things without someone to show you? If you're a family or student specifically.
I I'm a fan of AI. I know some people are like on both sides of the fence. I'm a tech person, and I just feel like we're in this time where it's like you either embrace it or you're just going to get left behind because whether we like it or we don't like it, it's here. And I think there can be very positive ways to use it, and for people that can't afford to get help or don't know how to get help, like there's very simple ways that they can start asking. And I also think from colleges' perspectives, if I'm understanding this right, I'm going to go to the NACAC webinar that they're having in a couple of weeks. But the more you feed AI stuff about your school, your institution, your programs, and things like that, it becomes the new SEO search engine. So now, as students are looking for it, it's going to pop up more. So I feel like there's all of these opportunities, like between social media, between AI, that are free. Where I mean, I remember like how much money we would spend when we worked in admissions, getting billboards and things in the subway. So all these things you used to have to pay for to be relevant, whereas like students could go ask what's a good theater program, and a chat GPT is going to kick out a list, but it's based on how it's getting fed. So I feel like for schools, if they can embrace tools like that, it will be ways for smaller schools that don't have big budgets to try to get their name out there in some way. Same thing with social media. I feel like it's a great leveraging tool for schools.
Yeah, I mean, I
So
agree with that. And I think in a communications campaign from an institution, as I am, absolutely having to be thinking about like optimizing how we're going to show up in AI searching so that we have some opportunity to overtake the illegitimate information. But the risk is AI goes out and it just it just trolls through everything that it finds out there, including bad information. And so there's still risk. There always will be.
mhm.
And I think it goes back to trying to establish and then lots of reiterating points from a lot of places around how do you discern what's legitimate for what I need to understand in this situation about this topic, and to be able to do some critical thinking, which is really hard to do when you don't know much about a topic and a whole bunch of information comes back, which is why I think the more institutions can be clear around, like, look to us, we're going to put it out here. This is what testing means for us. This is what the components of the application mean for us. These are the values we're working toward. This is why we ask what we do. Here's what won't make a difference. Like trying to load the space with really good information from enough places that it's easier for families or kids to think about using AI for a great roundup of, to your, like a search of like, who has this kind of theater program, right? That's a very specific thing that would be hard to do on your own and much
Right.
easier to do with AI. But then when you start investigating, well, tell me about, like, is this a good program? And you start asking AI to tell you about that. If you don't know what good program means to you, then you don't know how to really discern what's coming back or the sources of where it's coming back. And source acknowledgement or review, I think, is a really important part of whatever you're
Yeah.
doing in social media or with AI.
Maybe that's the key for a lot of this is does it reference sources, whether it's a social account? Do they make claims or make claims that point to the sources so you can go interrogate the original claim? Even with AI. So I used AI to start one of my son's college search. It wasn't really AI. I used a combination of things. But basically, I said he was interested in film. Give me a list of all the good film programs. And I did every variation of that you can come up with. And I took every school that came up and put it in a spreadsheet. It's like, I don't care why you called it good. Somebody said you're pretty. Great. You go on my list. Right? And so I ended up with a list of 60 schools that was essentially start searching here. And for me, it's like, great. Now at least I know and I didn't want to spend a ton of time trying to discern whether the thing was using criteria X or criteria Y. I just figured enough of them would appear on multiple lists, enough of them someone had a measure of goodness for this place that I can start digging deeper.
Mhm.
And I feel like AI and all of those things may make that a little bit better if
Mm.
you use it in the right way in terms of find me schools that are good but not because of rankings. Find me schools that are good but not because of association with any particular sports league or some such thing like that. Like
I
I
think
also
that's
hate every account that that has Ivy in the name because it says that's all we're looking at or first what we're starting with.
Yeah. I mean, I think that searches around, I think there are lots of different ways that you can use AI and ways that you can use Instagram. I mean,
Yeah.
or just social media in general for landscape introduction, getting acclimated to what's out there, the language, the, you know, things, if you were to say, okay, what makes, if you were answer back to ChatGPT, then what makes these good? Then it would
Mhm.
start giving you like, this is how I thought about what good would be to answer your question. And then you're like, well, I don't care about that, but I really care about this. And,
Right.
there's a lot there that I think can be really helpful. I think when you use ChatGPT to say, how do I get into, you're going to get a lot of answers back there too. And as robust information on a question like that in a roundup, that is a question that's not a good question to ask in the first place to the internet, right? And yet you could ask both of those things and get as much information back. I will say that I think anybody who was a student telling you how they got in, this is the essay that got me in, this is the research paper, like there's no student who knows how they got in. So that is not, there's nothing that you should not attach to that, really.
Yeah. I will extend that since you can't. I will to the parent the the counselor was like, this is like the notion that someone external knows what got someone in is a very weird notion because you
Yeah,
don't know. You know what they sent, you know they got in from the outside, but you don't know what formed the decision and who the competition was or
yeah,
what the pool looked like because it's not even a competition at most places.
Right.
So,
yeah.
um, interesting. So, Jenna,
Yeah.
what should what three things? Give me three happy things that you look for in follow-worthy accounts and two other accounts that you think are really helpful on some platform or another. You mentioned Dean J, which in case everybody missed
Love it.
it, I think her account name is Dean J on all the platforms.
I think it's like
Janine,
UVA.
yeah,
Yeah.
Janine Lalonde from UVA. She's
Hmm.
one of the most active people I've seen across social media and gives really good information about UVA.
Hmm.
So she's a great account. So three things you look for and two more accounts that you'd recommend if you
Okay,
could.
let's see. So three things I would recommend when they're trying to figure out who to follow. Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yep.
I mean, obviously you should be following the colleges that you're applying to. I mean, that should be like a no-brainer, just because you should follow both the admissions account because you're going to get the admissions information, but also just the main school account. You're going to see day-to-day stuff that you're not going to get just off the main website. So I think that'll give you a good indication of like, are these things I would like doing? Are these people I'd like to hang out with? That's that match component of like, do I see myself like enjoying these types of things that go on in the campus, the traditions, the culture, all of that. So I think those are like follow the school, follow the admissions account. And then if you're going to follow any of these like influencers, go to their bio, like go to their website, try to figure out what their credentials are. Because to me, if they've never worked in an admissions office, if they're not taking the time to at least be part of professional organizations like a NACAC and I mean, I get it. You could get people that are in them that aren't on top of it. But I just feel like if they're willing to go that extra mile to be ethical and take the standards, you're going to at least get somewhat of qualified people out there. Whereas, like you said, I think the moms that got their kid in that are now like, they know everything about a certain school and they can get you in, or the essay, like you said, that, now this essay will get me into I mean, that kind of stuff is just, to me, not, it's more for clickbait than it is for actual good advice that you're getting. So I would stay away from those. And like I said, just check people's credentials because I think they take everything kind of at face value a lot of times when they see a post come out. Um, and a lot of them too. I mean, we didn't even talk about this, but I know you referenced it in the email. It's like a lot of those too. I mean, they're charging people $90,000 a year then to like help them, which to me is also just wild, That's a whole nother topic, I feel like.
Oh, I was trying to find your rabbit hole, but I guess it was a story, so it went away. Is it
I think
still there?
it was like a slide. It's like a slide like further down, but I think I did it back in November maybe, so it's like a little
Okay.
bit buried at this point. But yeah,
If I can find it, I'll reference it somewhere because you went down the rabbit hole on the cost of some of these independent counselors, and it was
mhm.
fascinating.
It's fascinating. I mean, even just literally this week alone, I saw two things. One was $1,600 to get help with the waitlist letter. Now, if you work in college admissions, wait lists, I mean, are very much geared by the institutional needs. Well, they look at letters to help once they determine their needs, but to pay $1,600 to me is just wild. And then $3,000 an hour to just talk to a counselor. I'm just like, it's a wild place.
Yes. And will they learn more than calling the school
Correct.
directly?
Correct.
I
I mean, most
always,
Between, I mean,
you don't have to call the school. The school will tell you exactly what to do if you're on the wait list. If
correct.
you're
It's in the
like,
letter, it's in the portal.
right, we would like to have an update from your grades, or we would like to hear from you if you're still like, or all you need to do is tell us that you want to stay on the wait list and there's nothing else you need to do. The school will tell you what to do.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm just fascinated by it all because what's fascinating in all of this is that I don't do college counseling because and I've been around this. I know all. I'm like, I don't know enough to do it. And I've done a ton of it. I've done a lot around the college access space, but I would
Mhm.
never put myself forward as a college counseling expert because I legitimately can't tell you three things different between Penn State and UPenn. Like I can't tell you which one's bigger. Right? And if I can't do that, I shouldn't be college counseling anyone. But there are people with lower credentials than me who are claiming to be the expert.
Mhm.
And so that's one of the things that's fascinating to me about doing this and hosting these conversations because like I get to learn from you guys because I'm not going to go out there and claim that I know this. I can just listen to people who do this all the time. So social media feels often like it's people who just decided to hang up a shingle and see what they can charge to to claim that their advice is expertise and they have to pretend it's absolutely right to justify charging for it, which
Mhm.
always worries me.
Mhm.
Well, and I think
And
what Jenna
at the
said,
end of it,
no,
oh, good.
you go.
No, I was just gonna say, at the end of the day, they would never take on a client and charge them like $100,000 unless they knew chances were leaning towards they are a good fit for those schools. So like that student probably on their own could have probably, or for a lot less money, have probably gotten into that school because they're also not going to take a risk and
Right.
charge somebody that much money without a pretty good idea of them already somewhat being a viable candidate for an Ivy League school.
I think that the space, like so many things, the space is full, and it's full with really high integrity information and work and intent and opportunity to put good information out there and help students and families, and also a lot of really weak, poor information. And it's hard when it's not your area to know how to discern, but I think like a litmus test for when you're encountering information online, especially if you're looking for it. But once you start looking for it, then it starts just, popping up. So, you're going to get stuff you didn't go looking for, and you've got to be able to sort through how meaningful is what I just saw or read or heard in this post. And, I think that the hot take, the oversimplification of a process that's complicated should be a flag. A
Mhm.
hot take on one of the most important things you need to do in this process is meet deadlines. That's a good hot take, right? That's not oversimplifying a complicated process. That's saying there is a complicated process and deadlines are part of them. And if you miss these, you're going to make it more complicated for yourself and you may shut yourself out. That's a good hot take, right? You don't need a lot of words to get that done. A hot take on here's how you need to position yourself in your activities, on the list of your activities to be considered whatever, and then they tell you like do it in this order. That's not a good hot take. That is oversimplifying. It has nothing to do with any particular kid. It's not that helpful. I think there are so many independent counselors who do really good work, and thank God for them. They are in places where students don't have a lot of support. The family might not have a reference point for how they want to proceed in a college search, and a knowledgeable person in the space is a really, really huge benefit and asset to them. And then there's college counseling that is telling you who your child needs to become to be considered by a particular institution. That to me is not advice that you would want to attach to. That's just my opinion, to sort of put it in a scale. So there is really good advice. And I think anything that feels when you read it or receive it that you feel like an anxiety about having to do something or redo something, it's a good time to take a beat and be like, wait a minute, what is this? Like, I have a good plan, right? My kid's on a good path. My kid has a good list. My kid's taking good courses, whatever. And like, does this, what I just heard here, need to disrupt that? I think is a good test also for trying to, this is a really good piece of advice. I want to hold on to this one. This one we don't need. and let that go.
I like that. It also makes me think of one guiding light might be how clear and specific is the advice to where you're trying to go. In terms of Jenna saying she's always pointing back to the source, and her comments are almost exclusively about this school said this is what they want,
Mm-hmm.
versus the people who say this is true of college.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about Penn, not Penn State, because what's true
Mm-hmm.
of Penn and what's true of Penn State are not the same thing at all. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that to me, part of the weirdness is how do you find the people who have enough nuance so that it's clear that institutions are very different, what a Bowdoin wants and what Penn wants and what Arkansas wants just aren't the same thing at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? And people who talk about college a lot tend to, the ones who do it wrong tend to not
Mm-hmm.
have any nuance to that discussion of the variety of what we call college in the US, right? Because just, you know, I have two boys going through it now, and one's applied. My oldest goes to a school with 2,000. My youngest, the freshman class of the school he's likely to go to, might be 10,000. Like, those aren't the same world of place,
Mm-hmm.
and discussing them as if they're the same is very bizarre.
Yeah. Well, and
But
I
how do we
think,
discuss them as if they're not?
well, I think Jenna does.
But that's the challenge, right? Because she
Right.
talks, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in my head, Jenna, you talk about individual schools, not about college. And I think that's the difference that I'm recognizing.
Yeah, I'll talk about individual schools. And if I talk about college, it'll be more general in the sense of like, even the other day, I'm like, at the end of the day, like students end up happy wherever they go. Like there's not a higher level of happiness because you go to Penn versus Penn State, right? There's not. It's intrinsic that kids are happy wherever they end up going. So it's just, I think if I talk about it in general, it's more from that standpoint. But no, I do try to point out a lot of just like school specific information and or even just like with certain majors the questions they should be asking, it's like they're so focused on the overall school. It's like, okay, but you want to be a nurse, are you zoning in on the nursing program? Because that could look very different than the admit rate of the overall school, and it's just they're not. And then what does the pass rate look for, say, like the NCLEX? Like you're just not thinking like beyond, like you said, just that admissions general information. What does this entire process look like for you? So it's hard because it's like, how early do you start? Like back to your question, like if you could only visit first, you could only know all these. It's like there's just it's information over. I mean, I applied to 3 colleges back in the day. I mean, it was just like my local schools, and I kept it simple and I did it by hand and wrote it out. Like there was just not I would never, have thought of a school in the middle. I grew up in Florida. I wouldn't have thought of a school in the middle of New York. It just wouldn't have happened because it just wasn't, the information just wasn't like shooting at you from all directions. And now these kids are applying to 20 schools and they maybe really know like one or two of them. Like they don't even know half the schools they're applying to. So and then to then start following and get hit up. And it's all
I applied
general.
to four. My
Yes.
criteria, no essay, in New York. What was the other criteria? I think that was it. And maybe had a business program. Like I had some real
Yeah.
deep searching going on in my
Yeah.
college
And I think I
application.
applied in March. Like it's just like the way it's a different landscape now.
Yeah.
So,
And
Yeah.
in some ways it's good, right? It's easier for students to learn about more places easily and to get a lot of detail and do some good knowledge building of options in all the ways we were just describing, right? Like AI can be a great tool to get a roundup
mhm.
of where should I look. And, 60 schools wouldn't have been on your list, 30 years ago, Akil, with wondering like who has good theater program, but it's easy to get a list back
Right.
at 60
Right.
now and then decide where to start zeroing in. But even, I think going back to using Jenna as a responsible example, that the material that you're talking about putting out is material of discernment, right? Where your content is differentiating one thing from another thing and helping people think about the questions they should be asking, or here's how to like think about the information you're encountering in this place. And so, I point that out because I think when you are overwhelmed by what social media brings to you, there's what you go looking for, and then what it dumps into your feed. That I do think that there is something I was saying a little bit earlier, but there's something to be mindful of how it makes you feel when you're taking in whatever the social media thing is. Does it make you feel anxious, like there's something you have to do or rethink or revisit, or you're doing it wrong? Or does it make you feel like you want to know more? There's something to investigate. It feels secure. It feels affirming. Like how something feels is a good signal to your own self around like, what's the frequency of this piece of information that's hitting me? And it's hard to do that when we get it. It happens in so many topics, obviously not just higher ed when you're in the midst of college searching, but on this topic, I think it's helpful.
I like that because it's right. One of the guiding lights, I guess, in all of this is the person trying to help you or ramp up the anxiety. And if something feels like it's just ramping up your anxiety, then that might give you a signal. Like either way, whether it's right or wrong, if it's ramping up your anxiety, it's probably not the place to stay around. And that's not the account to follow. I like that as a benchmark for social. Right? It's like yeah,
Well, or a signal anyway, right? Like
right.
to just take a minute before you fully embrace a piece of information that popped up on your feed, and just try to take it in a little bit.
I like that. Let's take that happy positive note and bring this to an end with some advice for navigating social and the college admissions process. What would you say? Well, two things. One, advice you want people to walk away with, and two, what do you see that's exciting and hopeful, especially with regards to new technologies, with social media, and helping students navigate the process? And Whitney, you sort of gave us a lot of that already, with the use, availability of more information. Um, Jenna, what can you add to that for me?
I would say I do think colleges are starting to give a lot more information. I think because probably that they see social media running wild. I do feel like just over the past, like even this past admission cycle, more colleges giving more information along the way, even some giving information before decisions even coming out, just to say kind of this is what our applicant pool look like. These are what we're going to be able to extend offer wise to help just manage expectations. Because I think if you can manage expectations, it makes the fall a little bit easier if they don't get in the reactiveness that you talk about that you see online. So I think like I said, colleges between doing blog pieces or whether it's, posting things on social media are tackling it, I think, in a good way and becoming more present, which is awesome. And like I said, I think it's a great opportunity for schools maybe that don't have a big name out there too to just start being seen. And I can think of some schools that just do really good jobs pushing their social media to really grow and attract students. In terms of advice, I would just say, like you said, find people that resonate with you, that make you feel good about the process, that give you a little bit of calm with all the noise that's going on, and try to, I always say, stop comparing your journey to others. So try to only maybe follow a couple people that you're getting good sound of advice and just tune the rest of the noise out. I know the algorithm feeds you, it's what it's designed to do, but it's a tough space because it will drive people a little crazy for sure.
Whitney, any parting advice?
I think I I think the good news in all of this is there are thousands of colleges out there, colleges and universities, and most of them admit most or a lot of their applicants, right? The world of college admissions is not as fraught as it feels when the attention is on just the most selective schools. And I say that's working for one of the most selective schools, but it isn't representative of college admissions at large. And whether a student is on track to an open admission school or a less selective school or one of the most selective schools, what's most important is the student headed to a place where the way in which they learn, the way in which they engage with other people, I think language that is extreme is damaging. So when you talk about passion, when you talk about things that are like in absolute, that's a lot of pressure for a 17-year-old to feel as if they have locked in all of these things that are really like just a growth continuum over your entire life. And so being in the space of remembering, like, the experience is going to happen in over a long lifetime of learning. College is going to be part of it for some people, and it's possible for anybody who wants it. and to not over attach to highly concentrated signaling that there's only one way that education looks, there's only one way to start it, and there's only one way to be successful in how you're evaluated, because it undermines the student experience of just learning and trying to get on track to a place that can meet them in a really wonderful way. And there will be multiple schools for any kid that can do that well. There's no perfect place. And, Jenna, you were saying this earlier, kids are going to be happy. They're going to be happy when they're in a place where they can be who they are, continue to explore who they are, both as learners and as human beings around other people, and, all the new things that are going to come at them. And that's, keeping focused on gathering information around that is going to help keep the process sane. And when your attention starts tilting toward extreme language and scarcity language as the driver, I think that's when it becomes problematic.
I like that. I like that. You also spoke directly to me as a teenager. I transferred twice. My pathway was winding. I'm doing nothing related to my undergraduate degree. So it's like, yes, we can take divergent paths and end up perfectly fine. I
Yeah, I
did
mean,
not go to a place that was particularly selective.
the kids who are entering college now are going to graduate into jobs that don't even exist right now,
I know.
right? So, I mean, if we're not flexible in how we think about the continuum of education, and that like everything rides on this next step, everything doesn't ride on this
Right.
next step. The next step is important for someone to continue to work on the skills of learning and being receptive to the environment that is going to challenge them. And those challenges, as we know, are living them, continue to evolve and really quickly. And the pressures are going to be some that we can't even anticipate now. And thinking that you can lock it up in an answer at a particular school, and then that you have to modify a student's living experience for X number of years in advance of that to make that one box work out is not healthy, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge point. That's a whole nother conversation. Just
Mhm.
the changing nature. When I went to school, there were still typing. I did my application on typewriter.
Me too.
10 years ago, prompt engineering was no words anyone had ever heard.
Mhm.
And all of these things have changed. And I like the way you frame that of we need to recognize that this will be a way station on a journey. And you're just
An
learning
important
skills
one.
that you have to apply later.
Yeah, it's an important one, and
Right.
so you want to use it well, but it to treat it as if the rest of your life is good or bad based on this particular section of life is not
Mhm.
it's not a healthy attachment. Yeah.
And I think that's a great place for us to end, to keep in mind that as we navigate all this social media and stuff, just stay away from the people who are trying to make it sound like it's the end of the world, they know everything, and these extreme examples are meaningful. And if we do that, I think it can be helpful tools. I am extraordinarily grateful to both of you for taking the time to talk to me, for finally getting to meet in person in 2026 in person. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.